All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Adam Berezin from MSDW, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session, Intelligent Replenishment with Dynamics 365 Finance in Supply Chain Management, presented by Enrique Teo from Invista. So before we get started, I just want to mention a couple of things. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to type them into the chat box, and Enrique will get back to you via email after the session ends. We're also recording the session, and I'm hoping to have the video posted on MSDW probably within the next day or so. So without further delay, Enrique, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yep, you sound great.
Awesome. Great. So welcome everyone. Today we'll be speaking about intelligent replenishment with Dynamics 365, finance and supply chain management. So as mentioned earlier, my name's Enrique Teo. I'm a senior consultant here at Invista. I've been working with Dynamics for about 3 years, specifically within supply chain management and logistics, working with a lot of clients in the production, manufacturing, and warehousing aspects of the system. And so today I'm here to maybe show you a couple of new things and how to do inventory replenishment with advanced warehousing. So a little bit about Invista first. We're a consulting firm that's uniquely designed to optimize supply chain performance through people, processes, and technology. We were founded in 2002 and have nearly 300 associates delivering various solutions all across the market, from mid-market to the Fortune 500 companies. We've delivered more than 10,000 solutions successfully and have, more than 1,200 customers throughout various different markets like retail, wholesale, manufacturing, and distribution. But let's get on to our presentation. So our agenda for today is, a quick what is replenishment? Why is it important? What's the goal of it? And maybe some context as to, where Dynamics 365, F&SCM can assist us with this process. Then we're going to go through the core replenishment methods that D365 offers, the key configuration elements to, carry out a replenishment implementation, some real world scenarios of, what those configurations can look like, some best practices and resources, and, our recommendations when implementing something like this, as well as a Q&A. That's like was mentioned earlier, you can drop off your questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to get back to you at a later date through email. So moving on to, what is replenishment? So in very broad terms, replenishment is moving, your palletized inventory or bulk inventory from those bulk or reserve locations to forward picking locations where it's more accessible to pickers. The goal of this is usually to prevent stockouts and keep picking efficient, keep it quick, and generally prevent delays in your picking logistics as you carry out the day-to-day of your warehouse. So why is replenishment important? Well, replenishment essentially gives us the right mix of accessible inventory at the right time, without needing too much physical space. We have a limited space in a warehouse, and we can't keep everything readily accessible for a human to pick out to fulfill orders. So we keep most of our inventory in, like we said, those bulk reserve locations where it's more efficiently packed and more condensed. And then we take out only what we need to be set out in those forward picking locations. So where does D365 F&SCM fit into this picture? Well, D365, over the course of it developing its advanced warehousing feature set, has enabled many automations for a variety of different processes. And so for a while now, we've had automated replenishment as one of the processes that's available. This, helps carry out the process through the system, keeping the inventory accurate, and also it just has the intelligence of what a business has in inventory in a warehouse to assist with this process and make it a lot easier on the users. So, what are the core replenishment methods that F&O offers? So there is 4 main strategies that that F&SCM offers for replenishment. We have min-max, demand-based, wave, and event-driven, and these all work slightly different and sort of have different contexts where they are more helpful one than the other. So to go through them, first we have min-max. As the name says, we establish a minimum and maximum amount of inventory in these forward picking locations. And as the system sees that the inventory in those locations hits its minimum, it triggers work creation to replenish the inventory in them. Usually this is very useful for, steady high demand products. So what you would call your AA products or high volume movers that are highly predictable. So, these locations need to be properly stocked at all times because they're very popular. That's the kind of inventory that usually benefits the most from something like min-max. Then we have demand-based. So demand-based is tied to specific demand signals. It could be sales orders or production orders in the case of raw materials. And in this case, this is better in a context of, just-in-time manufacturing or lean environments, as well as, your products that maybe move slightly slower through your warehouse. And so you usually just keep it in inventory, but you do need some available, yet it's not beneficial to be constantly checking and replenishing locations for it in your picking area. So in contexts like that, demand-based works best in some cases for inventory like that. Then we have the wave strategy for replenishment. This usually works in conjunction with your waves as a wave method. And so during outbound processing, the system will verify that there's enough inventory allocated in your specific picking locations or whichever locations will be used. And if it sees that, there's not enough inventory in these locations, it will also release replenishment work to fulfill the full demand of that wave as it's completed. So this is especially useful for companies that use wave picking or that have a certain cadence through their day where things are being completed. That way it can be strategized into the schedule of that day in a way where, the replenishment is not in the way of the actual sales picking, but our locations stay stocked. Lastly, we have event-driven replenishment, and this type of replenishment works by triggering on certain warehouse events, and that can be a variety of different things, like the end of sales picking work, or a shift change, or production batch completion. This is usually very useful for operations that have some kind of cyclical workflow or a certain cascade of activities during the day that always follows the same order. Event driven is really good for that, and it helps because it waits for that action to happen and then triggers and creates that work for your users to go carry out. So that's as far as, the available strategies that D365 has for replenishment. So we can move on to, what does it take to configure, or what do we have to configure to have replenishment work in D365. So first we have our replenishment templates. Here's where we're going to define a lot of the main specifics of how the replenishment work will be created, in terms of, we're going to choose which method we're going to use, what warehouses that method is going to apply for in that template, which items will get we'll use that template, and then the replenishment zones that that template will operate on. So this is sort of the first point of contact where we're getting a lot of we're specifying a lot of the details of how the system will carry out some of this. Like any other advanced warehousing work, you're going to see some familiar configurations here that have to be carried out, like the next one, work templates. So in our work templates, we're going to specify how that work's carried out, whether it's just a simple pick and put, whether there's, new labels that have to be printed in between, anything of that sort, we can add in here. And you can see the navigations for those different setups in here, which is helpful. Next, we have location directives. In here, we're going to specify where to pick from and where to put to for this work. So in here, we're probably going to be looking to, have either some kind of zoning for our locations in the warehouse that we'll be using these directives for, as far as, what those locations do, and so on and so forth, such that we can tell it, hey, I only want you to pick out of these bulk locations to replenish inventory, and then these are the locations that actually, need replenishment. Along with our replenishment templates, we have replenishment zones, and these are a good way to group locations that will utilize this functionality. That way we can, get specific strategies going depending on the different groups of locations that we will be operating in. Like, say, example, you have stuff that has to be kept in freezers, or has to be taken out of freezers, or temperature, humidity controlled areas. that can all be set up there so that it can be maintained fairly easily, and we don't have to specify individual locations in a query or something like that. We just maintain a group and then add the group. Lastly, we have our wave templates. So in here, we're gonna have all of our checks for inventory allocation, failures, everything, in that aspect. Wave templates will just run all of those automatic checks to make sure that all that's needed is there to carry out and finish creating that work for a user to complete. So moving on to our practical use cases. In here, we're going to go through a couple different scenarios that are relevant to the context of replenishment. And so first, we have an e-commerce warehouse. Usually, common challenges for an e-commerce warehouse is, high volume, high SKU environment, where things are moving very quickly. Order fulfillment is paramount, and we're trying to get everything out the door at the right time. And so therefore, replenishment is extremely important to make sure our picking process is streamlined and remains efficient. So in this case, the best solution for, high volume SKUs or anything that's moving very quickly, has a lot of high warehouse velocity, is our min-max replenishment method. So with these frequent checks to ensure that these popular items are always stocked, that prevents any slowdowns in your picking process for order fulfillment. So for a warehouse that's moving very quickly, this is extremely beneficial. It should, generally reduce any picking delays and improve order turnaround. It should also, keep the picking area clean while pickers are actively in it, and replenish that inventory once things are back in order. So moving on to our second sort of common use case would be in just-in-time manufacturing. A lot of businesses nowadays are embracing the lean production ideology and trying to only make just the right amount of inventory once demand hits. And so with this, replenishment actually fits right in and is extremely helpful for lean production, where we want to keep storage very limited and only have materials on demand. In this case, sort of how some of the verbiage hints, our ideal solution is demand-based replenishment tied to production orders. So that way we keep our raw material inventory at the ready to be put into our inventory, into our production input locations. And it doesn't slow down our production line, but it only has just enough for what needs to be produced. So that's generally how, in this case, replenishment can be extremely helpful. Moving on, we have a distribution center with waves. So this is more for a slightly more structured operation where we may have, larger batches of inventory, where there is, specified periods of outbound activity, and there's more of a cadence to the day to make sure that everything remains efficient. And so usually those are the challenges. You have these long periods of outbound work where you have to absolutely make sure that those locations have enough stock in them. Otherwise, it's going to slow down your operation. So usually the solution for something like that is wave replenishment. It fits right into the cadence of what you're already doing. So it's really nice and streamlined. And so it generally, prevents interruptions as you're going through the process of those big outbound activities. And then once you hit a lull, you can replenish again. So moving on to sort of best practices and some tips to keep replenishment successful and helpful to your operation. First is for min-max replenishment, just regularly review those levels. Make sure that your minimums are appropriate, so that once that replenishment work can be carried out, that there's enough of a buffer that you won't stock out before it's replenished. And overall, just be receptive to the demand patterns of your SKUs. Generally, using demand-based wherever possible is incredibly useful. It's a leaner way to operate, and it maintains the bulk of your inventory in its most optimal storage presentation. It's especially helpful for items with seasonal demand or just generally unpredictable fluctuating demand, because it only puts the right amounts of inventory out into your picking locations, and it doesn't overfill or maybe take up too many of those picking locations that you may absolutely need for a more high velocity SKU. So our third is just leverage the use of zoning. We have, I think D365 has 4 or 5 different levels of zones for warehouse locations that are incredibly helpful to let you split out your locations in a variety of ways and maintain all of your directives and automations in a much easier manner without having to do incredibly complex edit queries in your directives and work templates and replenishment templates. So leverage zoning both in the system and physically is incredibly helpful for successful replenishment. Keeping similar SKUs together, and having a warehouse that's organized and tidy just speeds up your process all the way from put away to delivery. Lastly, automating alerts and having dashboards that give you relevant BI and any sort of data that's helpful to your operation is super helpful. So setting up tools like Power BI that work extremely well with D365 and are very seamless to integrate, as well as D365's own dashboards, which some of them have embedded BI reports in them, are extremely helpful to spot any issues very quickly, whether it's an issue with your business process, or something that has gone awry on the floor. Just having that business intelligence there to have proper visibility over your operation is extremely helpful, and really, really easy to set up with D365. So with that in mind, I encourage you all to shoot as many questions as you have in the chat, whether it's specific use cases or you've already started to attempt to implement replenishment and are struggling or stuck with something, or you're not sure what the best method is for your specific case. Please ask as many questions as you need. I will be happily answering them all between me and my colleagues, and we will make sure that you all get some good answers. But I appreciate all of you hopping on today and spending some time with me and talking about replenishment. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you very much.